Hi, I'm your host, Jürgen Strauss from Innova.buzz, and I'm really excited to welcome to the Innova.buzz podcast today from Buena Park, South California, Mark Collins, who's a business and life coach specializing in helping startup founders and business owners overcome mindset challenges and find balance and fulfillment in their lives. Welcome to the Innova.buzz podcast, Mark. It's a real privilege to have you as my guest.
Thanks so much. I'm excited to be here.
Excellent. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. I find it fascinating how you focus both on new business owners and those that have already achieved success but are looking for deeper fulfillment, because I think that's an interesting subset, if you like. So, can you share more about what drives you in this mission and also what impact you aim to make in the world?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the question. I think for me, the whole driver of everything I do, the passion and purpose that I have is really coming out of my own journey and trying to figure out those things we talked about, really the mindsets, the thought processes, those inner dialogues that, in many cases hold you up in starting a business and or really boldly going for it. And on the other side, when you're successful in really feeling like you're fulfilled versus just, I've succeeded, now what is some of the
Mm.
conversations that I have. I've been in both places. And in both places, it really has been understanding, not just a mindset shift, but really being able to understand the value I have outside of, in my case, business, outside of the entrepreneurial space and the things that I do. I think for a lot of people, myself included, the biggest driver was wanting to prove worth and value through the things that I accomplished. And in that place, trying to navigate those negative mindsets, those ideas, those thoughts that are telling you you're not good enough, imposter syndrome, fear of failure, or whatever. And so in finding strategies to be able to live that out, I felt like it was something I wanted to invest in other people. And the more I work with entrepreneurs and business individuals, the more I find, Jurgen, that it's really a we journey, not a me journey. I find that there's more commonality in those struggles and challenges than people who really have it all together. And so for me, it was really finding that message that I had that from my own journey and transformation was the message that was needing in a lot of business circles with a lot of individuals. And so started to create structures and frameworks and strategies and started to invest it in folks, and it's been my journey ever since.
Mm. Yeah, it's fascinating. This idea of imposter syndrome, and I'll come back to that in a minute, but one of the things that fascinates me, and I've spoken to quite a lot of people that have achieved an awful lot and have, from the outside, you would say they've been very successful. And it seems to me that often some of those people who are hugely successful, when they achieve goals, they kind of don't take the time to celebrate the goals and reflect on the goals and reflect on the success and what was it about that success that fulfills me. Yet
Yeah.
they get there and they almost feel deflated and almost feel disappointed or, um, yeah, disappointed is perhaps the right word, that they've achieved that goal because it's kind of the
Yeah.
end point. And what now? You ask the question, what now? Yeah, talk to us a little bit about that kind of condition and what perhaps people who do achieve goals, because I'm a big fan of celebrating. If you set goals and you
Yeah.
achieve a goal, take some time to celebrate and take some time to reflect back what really worked. So, talk to us a little bit more about your approach to that kind of syndrome, if you like.
Yeah. I love what you're talking about because I find that is very common in a lot of high achievers, even in my own success that I've had. And clients, I even think of a client of mine named Brett, who was exactly in that scenario where he was achieving business success, right? Being able to have, large scale business transactions and doing well in his industry. But at the same time, there was this, I call it the hamster wheel of success, where every business success leads to the next business success, and none of them the joy doesn't last very long, and it's really all a satisfaction. I tell people it's you're joyful for about 10 minutes and then you have to recreate it. In a lot of cases, it's really business success apart from identity, meaning this, that I have value because, right? I have value because I succeed. I have value because I have this net worth, or I have this amazing transaction, or I have this a beautiful car, or I have this great family, right? It's finding value and worth, and I what we call identity in the things that I achieve. And so when you're in that place of always having to achieve to not just, be able to have accomplishment and fulfillment, but really to prove who you are, none of them last very long, and you always have to recreate it. And so for Brett and myself included, and probably a lot of the people that you worked with, it was really for us being able to kind of what I call differentiate yourself from your success, right? What I tell people is you're more than your past and you're more than the success
Mm.
that you've created or you're going to create. When you start to understand the person you're created to be, when you start to understand identity apart from success, apart from business, then you're going to be able to have not just success, but fulfillment. Being able to have those things you talked about, really that celebration, but really that inner satisfaction of what I tell people is this: you're either creating success to prove who you are or because of who you are. And when you make that transition of understanding that these are just outworkings of the gifts, talents, abilities, the character, the value, and the worth that I bring to whatever my endeavor is, when you're able to do it from that perspective, now all of a sudden it's not a check mark that you have to continually recreate, but it's this satisfaction of, I've built this thing that, I'm sure you've had in your own life where it's this created whatever business transaction, artistic endeavor, sculpture, whatever the thing is that you've created, that that this is me being lived out in my best self in the way I can.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a really interesting point, this idea of identity. And because identity, I mean, one of the things we learn in all the psychology work that I've done is when your identity is threatened, that's when people are at their most defensive, if you like. And I
Yeah.
wonder, is the idea of imposter syndrome, because I know a lot of highly successful people do suffer imposter syndrome. Is that because at some point they're working towards their goals to prove their identity as opposed to um, being really confident in their identity and saying, this is what I bring to the table, and these successes that I achieve are because of my identity.
No, I think that's a astute observation because it is definitely that. A lot of times, in my own life, I've had that challenge, right? I created what I call, a transformational course in life mastery, in the book I wrote, Life Mastery: Living Life by Design, um, out of my own transformational journey. And part of that journey was imposter syndrome and really hesitating in those big tasks of success or even starting in new business ventures because you feel like you're not able to do it. I'm not qualified for what I'm walking into. I'm not smart enough. I'm not sharp enough. I'm not wise enough. Whatever the thing is that you believe about yourself. In many cases, frankly, to be totally honest, Jurgen, in all of those cases, it's an identity statement that says that I'm not good enough. And if they find out, then I'll
Mm.
lose this business, I'll lose this promotion, I'll lose this opportunity that I have. And so a lot of it comes from that place of your identity being in the things you do, and or, as I tell people, you're either living from who you're created to be or you're living from what your past has told you. For many people in high level successful fields, their success is an outworking of trying to prove your past wrong, or those people wrong who told you that you aren't going to be able
Mm.
to do it, or even those inner voices that are inside of you. Imposter syndrome is really living that out and trying to use success to overcome it. And the challenge is, I tell people, you can't succeed away imposter syndrome. You can only delay it for a moment and struggle with it through it. But at the end of the day, as I tell people, I got to the top of the mountain in business, and I see that with a lot of the people I work with. And I found out fear, failure, and imposter syndrome just came along for the ride, because outward activity can never change an inward belief. But when you start from the place again, identity and value and worth and created value, now all of a sudden those things won't have a foothold in your life, and they won't stop you from succeeding or having the fulfillment you desire. But what they also won't do is give you that weight that you carry around all the time. Like myself in business, waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, feeling like I'm about to fail, right? Whatever it is, there's a big transaction or a huge decision or some, financial struggle we're trying to work through, and all those mental processes saying, I'm going to blow it. I'm not good enough. I'm not going to be able to succeed, right? The fear that the person I wanted to be, the person I believed I could be, I'm not going to show up as. And the alternative is, those voices in your head being right. So for us, it's really counteracting some of those things, reprogramming some of that, and giving you the ability to not just succeed, but be fulfilled because you're living from who you are. And in that place, you understand you're the answer walking in the room, not the question to be figured out.
Mm. Yeah, that's it's interesting, isn't it? And one of the things that I guess I'm curious about your view on is there's imposter syndrome, and then there's, okay, I'm going to dive off the deep end here. I'm going to stretch myself. I'm going to go into an area that really is way outside my comfort zone because that's how I'm going to grow. And
Yeah.
and in doing that, there is an element of fear. There's an element of awareness of the risk, and there's probably an element of imposter syndrome, no matter how much work you do, to kind of address that and to separate your identity from what you're doing. How do
Yeah.
you recognize when it's really truly imposter syndrome that's going to be in the way of your progress, as opposed to looking at the risks involved and what could go wrong here and how do I mitigate these things that might go wrong along this journey?
Yeah, I think the challenge is being able to differentiate the two, isn't it? And being able to understand, what is this, that high value target, that high value goal that I have in my life that I'm able to achieve, versus, reaching out for something that is just maybe some insane idea that's again me believing that I'm supposed to be this person, and so I'm going to go for that thing. And in a lot of cases, it really comes down to this. It comes down to, well, let me start with the definition. Life mastery, as we use it as a framework for starting to unpack some of these principles and strategies, is the definition we have is life mastery is you living from who you're created to be at the highest level you're created for in every area of life. In your entrepreneurial journey or your business or job, that's just one of a multitude of areas of life. So it's unpacking that in a way that you can understand it, but it's understanding, okay, so again, identity, value, worth, who's the person I'm created to be, and what's the highest level of in business? What's the highest level of achievement or impact or result I believe I'm meant to have? And so when you start from a place of really me living from who I am, not trying to succeed to prove who I am, you'll stop having foolish decisions. You'll stop having these, what would you would maybe call insane and unreasonable goals that you're using, not because you believe you can reach them, but you believe that when I reach that, I'm going to be
Mm.
somebody of worth and value, right? I won't be successful until I'm a millionaire or I have a multi nine figure company or whatever the things are that you're there. And many times those ideas lead you to disaster because, Jurgen is successful in this area. So I want to be like him. So I'm going to try and achieve that thing without really understanding if you have the capability, if you have the worth, if that really is the impact you're supposed to have, where you see somebody of amazing success and and you feel on the inside, I can't be happy. I can't be feeling valued or worthy. I can't feel fulfillment until I look like him. And so for us, it's really not unpacking goals first, but unpacking identity first, because in that place, now all of a sudden you can have those big dreams, those amazing goals, and those bold things that you really search for and reach for. But it's coming from a place of, I know this is a capability I have. It doesn't minimize, right, the stretch or the reach for that goal. But what it does is it gives you confidence walking into it so that imposter syndrome doesn't come along for the ride. When I know that I understand my identity, and I understand this, I believe, is the level of life I can live. Well, I can't show up as some imposter who doesn't believe I am that
Mm.
person. I'm simply stretching out to the full value that I'm worth.
Yeah, the self-awareness part is really important, isn't it? So for people that because that's a huge challenge, really, the self-awareness, and we talk about that a lot in all kinds of different areas. It going
Yeah.
back to knowing yourself first, and whether it's about marketing or in setting goals or achieving sort of professional development skills and so on. It all starts with that in my mind. How how do you suggest people kind of look at that, particularly if they're a little bit uncertain and maybe they're struggling a bit and they're out of balance with various aspects of their life, or they are suffering imposter syndrome? How can they tackle that? On the other hand, if somebody believes they've got it all together, how can they do an assessment to say, okay, this is actually who I am. These are my strengths. These are the areas that perhaps I shouldn't be going into because I'm not really good at that. Or do I explore that and say, can I develop that skill further?
No, I love the differentiation because I believe that in a lot of cases, at whatever level of journey you're on, whether you're just an entrepreneur starting out, or you're somebody in the C-suite, or you're somebody who's, you're working in multi-million dollar deals. I believe that at some level we have this awareness of portions of parts of who we are, right? Skill sets, gifts, abilities, talents, right? At some level in personal development and or business development, they tend to walk side by side. You're trying to gain skill sets, whether it's communication style or it's leading teams or whatever the things are that are the skill sets that you're trying to gain. So I think part of it is we understand some of the aspects of who we are, but the challenge comes in, we don't understand necessarily identity as much as we understand skill set, gifts, and abilities. And there's a difference between the two, right? My character is, my compassion, my worth, my passion, my empathy, my desire to love and to care and to be, a valuable member of a relationship or a group, versus I'm able to lead people. I'm able to make decisions. I'm able to whatever task manage or what have you. So what I do is I differentiate the two. Okay. So who are you apart from your past and the things you've walked through, right? Successes or failures or what have you. And who are you apart from your success? The person looking back in that mirror is the person that we're going to be talking to, because that's the skill set is set aside and you're looking at your character, your value, your worth, your integrity, your ingenuity, and those things that make you who you are. The interesting thing we don't have a lot of time to unpack it here, I'm sure, but what's interesting is who you are in one place is who you are in every place. And the thing that shows up constantly wherever you're at, whether it's, in your spiritual journey, your physical journey, your vocational journey, your relational journey, is the character of who you are, right? As a leader in my job and business, I'm leading people and teams and looking for common goals and reaching towards, the deliverables that we're supposed to have, right? But it's not in those skill sets that I have that transfer into my family, but it's in the character of the person of integrity, the person that is got can build a dream, can communicate well, and all those things. It's the character of who you are that shows up in each of the areas. The one thing that doesn't differentiate, depending on what hat you wear, is the person that is looking in the mirror, is the person that looks back at me. And so for us, it really is differentiating the two and figuring out, how do I start to separate myself from a vocational role and a title and start to understand who is this person looking back in the mirror, because that's the person that will succeed in business and relationships and life. And so for us, it's unpacking some of those things, starting with identity and going straight into mindsets, thought processes, and mastering your thoughts, your words, and your actions, because as we find out, as in business success, who you think you are, you'll become. The things you tell yourself about yourself will be a self-fulfilling prophecy that works its way out in your job or in your business or your role with your family. So what are the words that you're using to yourself? What's the mantra, the affirmation that you're using? Is it a generic phrase of somebody you want to be, or is it a reminder of who you were created to be?
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? This idea of identity. I mean, I agree with you in terms of how you show up in different aspects of your life is pretty consistent, even though your skills that you bring to the table in different roles are different. They may not be applicable in, like leadership skills or technical skills in a business sense may not be applicable in a family or personal relationship sense, although leadership, I suspect, might be. The other thing about the identity is that we really hang on to the identity, right? We defend that. And this is, I know from studies of language, the whole idea of illness. People talk about, I am sick, or I am depressed, or I am a cancer sufferer, is a statement of identity. And unconsciously, they're hanging on to that because it's part of their identity. And the moment they can shift that narrative to, I'm suffering from this illness, or I'm suffering from cancer, or I'm suffering from depression, is the first step to actually changing because they've changed their identity. That's no longer the part of their identity. It's just what's happening to what they're going through right now. And because they're going through it, it means they can come out the other side, hopefully for the better.
No, I love that. And the interesting thing is, I love how you say that, because it is also the same on the positive side.
Mm,
So you talked about cancer or about some struggle or issue I am, whatever, versus this is something I'm struggling with or I'm walking through or I'm recovering from, right? It matters the words that you use, and it matters the thoughts that you have. But here's the interesting part from a business perspective, from an entrepreneur's perspective, the other is equally true.
mm,
For many of us, we are our I am my title,
yeah.
right? I am a millionaire. I am a CEO. I am an entrepreneur. I am whatever the thing is, founder or what have you, right? We write our resume and we believe our resume, but really the resume, the things that you are in skill and role and ability is an outcome of who you were created to be. What I tell people is they're either a substitute for your identity or they are an outcome of your identity.
Mm,
And what I say that for is because back to the initial part of our conversation, climbing to the top of that success mountain and find out that, okay, now I'm looking around for the next mountain. Where's the next highest one? Because now I need to do it again. That repetitive nature of having to do it again without being able to celebrate the moment that you're in, the success that you've had is an indication of that same, on the illness side versus the success side. It's me identifying with outward responses to my life, my outcomes in my life. And in that place, some of the people that I'm challenged with is they get tired of that role. They get tired of what, again, I call that hamster wheel of I have to succeed again. I have to succeed again. And at the end of the day, the satisfaction becomes less and less and less. And in each case, I find that people I talk to and I work with have the question of who am I apart from this? Because if I do this the rest of my life and this is the only outcome I have, and this is the only thing that I can stand for, be known for, then have I really done anything? And so for us, some of it is really kind of unraveling a little bit of that. Again, the mindset, the thought process of I am this versus I am a person of integrity and worth. I'm a person of passion and care. I'm a person that empathizes with those I love and that invests in those things that matter. And because of that, I'm successful at being a CEO or I'm a leader of people that strives for the best for them. There's a difference between that and I'm a CEO or I'm a millionaire or I run a multi-million dollar company or whatever the things are that you're doing. The difference is fulfillment versus success. Success is simply climbing the mountain faster than anybody, knowing how to get there and being able to do it in a way that makes you the leader in that area. Fulfillment is you living from who you're created to be. And at the end of the day, the satisfaction and joy and excitement of living out that life is irreplaceable. I know that there are people on both sides. And when you're on the front side of, I'm still climbing the mountains and it's becoming less and less fun, is when you start to maybe understand that maybe I need to kind of create some strategies in my life, have some life mastery skills as we talk about, so that I can start to unpack who am I apart from these things. And at the end of my day, what is the impact I'm having? Is it a title that I fulfilled or is it the person that I became?
mm, yeah, fascinating. One of the things you talk about that comes through in some of your posts, and it's probably in your book, I imagine. You talk about unlocking and unleashing the hero in hiding. So, talk to us a little bit more about that metaphor and how you go about that.
Yeah, I love that. And so I find that that is my role and if I was to strip down everything I try and do with people, whether it's coach or mentor or strategist, it really is me helping them to unlock and unleash the hero in hiding. And what I mean by that is a couple of things. A lot of times there's the person we believe we are on the inside, and there's a person that shows up, right? I believe I'm a person of compassion or I'm a person of passion and drive and right and excitement and aptitude. But at the end of the day, sometimes it's not the person that shows up. That really was for me. The start of my journey was being a young man. I remember being even back in what we call high school here, right? So it'd be secondary school. And in that place, I remember that the anxiety and the insecurity of this young man going to school, struggling with some things and, this, awkwardness of social interactions and all that. I remember, not to be too blunt with the matter, but I remember having to change shirts before I went to school because I would put on a shirt and because the anxiousness and the insecurity, I would sweat through it. I would have to take that off and put a second shirt off. So I remember being that person of insecurity in my own life and in that place trying to figure that out. But the thing that really drove me into studying so many courses and books and all of those things, and then creating what I consider a transformational course in life mastery was there was a sense on the inside that there was more than the life I was living. Not just the outcomes, not just the dollars and cents and all of that, but believing that there was more worth and value than what I was willing to show in the boldness of actions, in the bigness of dreams, in the willingness to walk into things that, as you so eloquently talked about earlier, right? Those uncomfortable things when you're reaching beyond what you have the answer for, but you know that, man, this is something that I really want to get. This is something I believe I'm meant to strive for. I remember being that guy and then walking through that. And a lot of it comes down to this. It's understanding that there's a hero on the inside, the person that you're created to be. And even whether you're successful as I was, and, Brett or Vance or John or any of the people I could talk about who were my clients, who you've reached that mountaintop and you're no more satisfied than you were when you began. You just have a higher dollars, you just have a better zip code. You just have a bigger house. But at the end of the day, you don't feel worthy even at that point of success in your life. For everybody, whether you're a successful entrepreneur or somebody who is just starting out or somebody who is just walking through, they're going to university, or they're, in a position in a factory or in an accounting firm or what have you. I believe there's the person you are on the inside, this innate individual that you believe you can be. And it is that hero. That's what I call the hero in hiding. It's the you that is in there. You just don't know the strategies, the tools. You just don't know how to have that person show up when stress happens, when big decisions are supposed to happen, when those bold moves are necessary. How do I be that person who is betting on not just the outcomes, but on myself and being able to achieve them? That's the hero that we're trying to help people to unpack at whatever level of, journey that they're on in that hero's journey.
And also, you talked about kind of at school. I mean, I know from my days at school, there were lots of things that happened where, I mean, I had self-confidence, I had belief in my abilities, I knew I was really good, but there are a number of things that happened that kind of put me back in my place. And so I played safe, and I built up walls of protection, effectively, so metaphoric walls of protection around me. Now, I'm not even sure those walls are completely gone today. I mean, I think I've dismantled many of them, but
I'm sure
many of us have had similar experiences and probably still have those walls around us, and the hero's hiding inside those walls, right? So how do we know if there's sort of some residual stuff from past experiences that we've built up these walls, or whatever the protection is, and can start to break them down?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of ways. I think one is exactly what you talked about in that inner realization that I'm playing it safe, that there's an option, there's an opportunity for something that's, that's amazing, that's bold, that's glorious. That's the thing that, I would really love to strive for or believe for or reach for, but I hold back, or I, that incremental growth, when expansive growth is what's needed. It's that place of where there's a decision that can be made, but the outcome could be negative. And because of what I've walked through before, I'd rather believe I could have had the positive result and not go for it than reach out for it and find out the negative result, right? I'd rather believe that I could have been successful in business than really strive for it and find out that I failed. And in that place, that not the business failed, but I'm a failure. As I said early on in our conversation, you're either living for who you're created to be or what your life has told you. The challenge here again is everybody has a life that's told them something. And it's not minimizing the journey that people have gone through, but it's the understanding of we all have a life that wants to tell us, limit yourself, take control, hold back, don't go in too far, don't dream too high, don't do too much. So the first is understanding that we all, I guess I'll be very clear in this. We all have those things where we're like, I could have gone for it, but you justify it, you reason it away or what have you. And the other part I think is, so there's that single thing where I think there's this, again, innateness that on the inside, we know that there's more than what we're doing. That's one indication. The other indication is, just to be totally transparent, when you don't like you. And for me, part of that journey, part of that passion, part of that desperate need to have the hero that I believed I could become out was I didn't like the guy that was showing up. I didn't like the guy that held back. I didn't like the guy that sort of kind of did it, but, made promises, but didn't really come through with it because the fear was greater than the willingness to be vulnerable. I didn't like the guy who was showing up, whether it was in my relationship or in business or jobs or what have you. And in that place, I believe there's a gift in there. The gift, if you can unpack it a little bit, is in believing that you don't like that guy that's showing up or that woman that's showing up. There's, again, that innate understanding that there is an alternative, that there is somebody else that could show up. And to me, that's a gift, because if I was just satisfied with a limited life or watering down my dreams, then to me, that would be a tragedy. But in just knowing that, man, I don't like the fact that I don't do this, I believe is the seed of greatness and that hero on the inside trying to get out.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I've recently, I'm quite impatient and I get sometimes quite frustrated and angry with stuff that goes wrong. For example, if I'm on the computer and software crashes or something, and if I'm really triggered badly by something like that, I sometimes reflect back and say, "Hang on, what's going on?" Because it's not just the fact that this is going wrong and it's annoying for me, because it's always annoying. But sometimes I say, "Oh, it crashed. I'll just start it again." And other times
Yeah.
I'm really, and to actually step back and take the time, because I think there is an element of that for some reason I don't like myself right now, and to have the curiosity to say, well, why is that? What's going on? What else is going on? And why is my fuse so short right now? Is something
Yeah.
that I find quite helpful at times. And you talked about vulnerability as well, and that's kind of vulnerability for yourself. The ability to say,
Yeah.
"Well, okay, I'm losing it here. So what's really going on?"
No, I love that. And what I love about that is one of the things I tell people, we talk about in the course and I touch on in the book as well, is that emotions are an amazing flag that's being raised up that says, hey, there's something going on here. And I love what you're illustrating with your own life, because that's some of the tools that we do, is to help people understand, first off, recognizing those powerful, anger, worry, stress, anxiety, those powerful, what I call disempowering emotions that are coming up at times, right? It's like, why am I getting mad at a computer, or why am I anxious at, opening up my email and you're worried about what is going to be, right? What's the emotion that's happening there? And then the second part of it is the thing you talked about, which is, and where is it coming from?
Hmm.
There's some great health. Again, life mastery. I titled the book Life Mastery: Living Life by Design, Not by Default. And the difference between default and design in one area is exactly what you talked about. The default that most of us live with is, I'm getting angry and I'll lash out, I'll rant, I'll scream, I'll do whatever I do, right? Whatever the response is. And then I'll eventually calm down and get back to normal and do the things I need to do. That's default. And that's what most of us do, because we don't believe we can master our emotions. We just ride the wave, try and manage them as best we can, and then move on from there.
Or worse,
But the
still
mastery,
is suppress them.
yeah, and in both cases, not doing the healthy
Yeah.
thing. But mastery, living life by design, is that example that you just gave. It's recognizing, hey, this is a high level of emotion that maybe this doesn't warrant. Where is this coming from? And then having that inner dialogue of, is it a frustration? Is it a value statement? Right? I'm so whatever. I'm so dumb. I'm not being able to do this, or I'm gonna fail at this, or this thing is stopping me from, right? The stories we tell ourselves that build up those emotions and continue to repeat them. But in that place, being able to stop, say, okay, well, I'm recognizing there's a high level of emotion, anger, worry, stress. Where is this coming from? And what's the story I'm telling myself about what I'm going through? Typically, it'll be tied to an identity statement. It's not the activity I go through, right?
Mm.
Because life happens to everybody, great, bad, and in somewhere in between. But it's, what does this experience say about me, right? About my value, my worth, my capabilities, right? My integrity, my impact, the things that I say about myself, because those are the things that cause the high emotion. When you can start to unpack those, you can start to, again, live from identity, not from experience. And in that place, be able to have the responses you need to get the answers, to move ahead with the solutions, and to move forward with the things that you're trying to achieve.
Mm, mm. Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah, before we move on to the Buzz, our innovation round, I'm curious. Um, we talked a little bit about fulfillment, and I'm curious as to how you define fulfillment, and also whether that's changed for you over the years with the work you've been doing and with the people you've worked with.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for us, or at least for myself, what I define fulfillment as is me living out who I am in the things that I'm doing. Meaning this, I'm sure you've had it in your life, Jurgen, where you have these activities or these things that you're doing that you're absolutely passionate about, things that you take extra time to do, things that you have to be pulled away from for whatever family responsibilities or, appointments or things that you need to do. It's the things that you give extra time to. It's the things that you say you're going to do for 20 minutes and 40 minutes later, you're still all in it, having to pull yourself off to some other responsibility. So things that you naturally have energy for, you naturally have passion for, you don't have to work yourself up to do them or convince yourself to start them. You're absolutely in on them. I believe these are what I call the impact in the world that has your name on it, is those things that you're desiring for. And so for us, fulfillment is really living from that place, right? A life mastery, who you're created to be at the highest level you're created for. And it's knowing who you are and living that out. Fulfillment is me living out the impact that I'm meant to have in the world. Success is simply me striving to achieve at some endeavor, some activity, some vocation. And I know the difference between the two, because in my own life and with some folks that I've worked with, we found success, the hamster wheel of success. And at the end of the day, you're as dissatisfied when you started as when you're finished, because none of them was you feeling like, man, this is just me lived out. It was just a pelt on the wall. It was another zero on your bank account. And then you move on to do it over and over again. Fulfillment is me living from who I'm created to be, having the impact I'm meant to have, and being able to have the joy, the peace, the great fulfillment and satisfaction, being able to do that.
Mm. Yeah, it's a great definition. And it's to me, it's like landing a new client and signing a new deal, and there's a dollar figure associated with the service you're providing, obviously, and that's always nice to see those numbers and say, oh, okay, the
Yeah.
P&L of the business is starting to look a lot more healthy now. But the thing that really gives me a buzz is when the client then says, oh, this has happened because of the work we did together, or this came about because of the community that you've built. This I met this other person and we got together and we developed something because you introduced us in the community, and I get a huge buzz out of that, because that comes back to what you talked about, impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the fascinating thing as well, isn't it? Is that most of the people I work with, frankly, I would say all of them, the fulfillment they have isn't in finishing an activity. It's in recognizing the impact that that thing did, whether it was an impact on some person or it was an innovation that really changed, right? Changed your
Mm,
business, changed it. I think about Elon Musk and whatever you think about him, but I think about the rocket that they have for
mm,
SpaceX, and that time when the first rocket actually landed again after being
yeah, yeah.
ejected from the spacecraft, right? That it's that kind of thing
Mm,
where it's like, man, this is you had a goal that you believed you could have, or you had an impact in somebody's life you believe you were meant to have, and you see that thing come to pass. And in that place, there's this pride, this joy that comes from that, like you talked about many times. Most of the times with most of the people I work with, it isn't because of those activities or the rocket landing or the innovation happening. It's seeing that the impact you desire to have in people's lives is actually happening, that their lives are different because of your investment.
mm.
And in that place, that's irreplaceable by a dollar amount or a success or a title.
Yeah, yeah. Well, some of those things are enablers, but yes, you're right. It's not replaceable. All right. Well, I mean, we could go on philosophizing for ages on these things, and we haven't even got to how to change mindset and so on. But there might be another episode sometime down the track. I think it's a good point now, though, to move on to the buzz, which is our innovation round, where I ask the same 5 questions of every guest, and the idea is you'll give us some short and sharp answers that hopefully will inspire the listener to go and do something awesome today as a result.
Absolutely.
You all set?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Let's do it.
What's the number one thing anyone needs to do to be more innovative?
I think is to open their mind up to possibilities. So to not limit themselves by what their past or what somebody else has done, but really dream beyond what they think is even possible.
Mm. Yeah, that's great. And I think curiosity is a big one there. And one of the
Yeah.
questions that kind of relates to what you said is that I really love, and I can't remember who I first heard this from, but it was like, why not? Why can't we do this? And why not now? And why not me? And it's sort of
Yeah.
a three-pronged question.
I love that.
Mm. All right, what's the best thing you've done to develop new ideas?
The best thing I've done to develop new ideas has been really I mean, I hate to sound cheesy, but is really starting to unpack created value and worth. I think a lot of times it's the thing that holds you back is your belief in yourself and being able to do it. But when you start to see that you have value, that you have worth, that you have achievement in your life. So the more I believe in myself and correctly and clearly see who I am, the greater the impact I can have on other people, the less I'm my own hindrance and the more I'm my own cheerleader moving those processes forward.
Mm. I love it. Yeah, it's great. So just really self-awareness of who you are as as opposed to just what your skills are. All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have a favorite resource you use most often?
Well, if you want to talk about an internal resource, it's affirmations and meditation. It's
Mm.
really striving to align my thoughts with the journey and the destination I desire to have. For us, there's 5 areas of life mastery, and for each area, I have a vision for, again, that life mastery, life of living the maximum life that you're created for. I have visions and scripts for each of those areas, and I continue to remind myself of those. As I said earlier in our conversation, you think you are going to become
Mm.
when you continue to tell yourself that highest level of value that you're going to have, you start to see yourself showing up in those ways in all the areas of your life.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the affirmations. I think the trick is, again, coming back to what we've been talking about before, is really knowing yourself and that
Yeah.
self-awareness, and writing an affirmation that actually speaks to you and not is something that somebody else might expect of you. Because then when you read that, you
That's
think, oh,
It sounds like you read my book. That's exactly it. It's affirmations aligned with
yeah.
identity, not affirmation create some sort of generic dream identity that you really don't believe anyway.
Yeah, I've
Absolutely.
been through some exercises where I've kind of felt that, and I said, "Oh, I'm not even really sure I want to write anything here because I kind of feel as though this isn't sort of isn't working for me." And then, yeah,
Absolutely.
and then if you force yourself to write something there, it's really not you. All right, now what's the best way to keep a client on track?
It's go back to your dreams and your visions.
Hmm.
Who are you and what's the life that you're meant to live? When you can do that, you'll show up as that person again. That hero in hiding starts to show
Whoops.
up as a hero inside. And the second thing is that when you continue to have your vision in front of you, you'll continue to strive to work towards it. Really, it comes down to that. Many times when we are challenged or we have, those bit stumbles that we have in our life, it's because I'm focusing on the challenge of today versus the destination I'm walking towards.
Hmm. Yeah, so the affirmations and the vision you talked about earlier are quite important. They're not just a reminder to well of your identity and who you are, but also help to keep you on track if it's a project or a goal that you're working towards.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, they're not the fuzzy generic, mantras of, I'm the millionaire, I'm this, I'm
Mm.
that. It's really understanding what your impact is, giving voice to that impact you're supposed to have, and then being able to align yourself with those skills and abilities to walk towards it.
Excellent. All right, final question to the buzz round. The number one thing anyone can do to differentiate themselves.
Show up authentically. Many times we think we're making an impact in the world, but really what we're doing is imitating somebody else who's successful. And it's, some of what you talked about earlier, you know, Why can't it be done? Why can't it be done now? And why can't it be me?
Mm.
Many times we look towards somebody else's what success or fulfillment looks like. And if you could strip that away and simply say, well, what's the impact I'm supposed to have and strive to do that, you'll show up in a way that's not just authentic, but is such a differentiation to what other people are doing that you're going to have clients, people drawn to you because different always matters more than more of the same.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's such an important point to, we can learn from other people. We can model from other people's success and understand what are the elements that made them successful that I can learn from. But yeah, copying them is kind of crossing the line that you lose authenticity and it goes away from who is it, who am I really?
Yeah. And at the end of the day, what I tell people is if you're striving to imitate somebody else, the best you can ever do is second place. And you never win by being second place at anything. So why not try and be an original, figure out your impact and you learn from other folks, learn skill sets and abilities and those kind of, business strategies. But at the end of the day, if all you're doing is parroting somebody else, right? When I tell people this, if we both have the same answers all the time, if we both have the same look, if we both have the same product, one of us is unnecessary.
Yeah.
So why try and strive to live in that area?
Mm. Yeah, I love that. One of us is unnecessary. All right. Well, thanks, Mark. This has been absolutely fabulous. Now, where can people find out more about you, reach out to, perhaps even say thank you for what you shared with us today?
Yeah, I appreciate asking. I try and be a one-stop shop, so everything that I have and all the things that you heard us talk about today, you can find on my website, which is freedom-4-life.net, freedom-4-life.net. I have my course out there. I have an ebook version of my book, of course, because you can get everything on Amazon. You can also get my book on Amazon. But if you want to reach out to me directly for a thank you and or a question around life mastery, some of the things I had talked about today, you can reach me at Mark, M-A-R-K, at freedom-4-life.net.
Excellent. And as always, we'll include all those links in the show notes to make it easy. So as we wrap it up, Mark, what action would you like our listener to take out of our conversation today?
The first is to understand who you think you are, you'll become, and really start to unpack that, start to pay attention to what are the things you're telling yourself about yourself. And if they're not aligned with who you're created to be, then they're lying to you. And maybe you want to tell yourself the truth. So start to unpack some of those identity statements, start to unpack who you are apart from your past and apart from your successes. And in that place, the more you understand who you are, the more the impact you're supposed to have will become clear.
Love it. And it's pretty clear call to action there. So thanks, Mark. And thanks so much for the conversation today. I've really enjoyed it, learned a lot. You've sparked a lot of ideas and memories as well for me. It's been fun and all the best for the future. Please do stay in touch.
Thanks so much. I appreciate having the conversation. It was awesome.